Any leadership that teaches you to depend upon another race is a leadership that will enslave you. Any leadership that teaches you to depend upon another race is a leadership that will enslave you. They gave leadership to our foreparents, and that leadership made them slaves. But we have decided to find a leadership of our own.
Not your average nigga, I'm a god out the hood. They can't downplay me, I came up, I'm elevated. I ain't gotta say too much for them to know I'm coming for what's mine. You know they see me in my presence, say they see how I'm coming. Young, but you not just gonna finesse me like you did my peoples. Then back when you said they was emancipated. This ain't that. Your head too big, you feeling yourself. The game wasn't fair, you had the advantage, we wasn't educated. I don't look at you people the same. Nah. Your worst nightmare, my skin tone about them chains. Yeah. Not no circus lion, son, I can't be tamed. You gon' have to kill me, pussy, Toby ain't my name. Y'all still want us think our history started when we were slaves? What? Come on now, talk about them pyramids we made. I was chosen by that man, you know y'all just been running game. The nerve of you acting like...
Man, welcome to Shifting the Culture podcast. I'm your host, Brother King Cam, and you know, man, we always have those conversations around the culture that helps us to control our narrative and to push the culture forward. So thank you for joining us again as we continue to do this work. So we want to get right into it. Yesterday, news broke that Donald Trump, I believe it was yesterday. Let me see. Let me make sure we're right. Okay, yep, yesterday. So yesterday, news broke that President Donald Trump commutes federal life sentence for Gangster Disciples founder Larry Hoover, right? Larry Hoover, as well as pardoning NBA Youngboy, as well as pardoning some other individuals as well. But the two major ones was NBA Youngboy and then Larry Hoover. And what we want to get into is some of the obvious backlash, some of the different reactions that have taken place on social media around Larry Hoover and the commutation of his federal charges, right? So, number one, you see a lot of our people are confused with pardon and commute. So we want to get into first what commute means in law, because that's important. And because the headlines came out with pardon and commute in the same headline, but you know how we do. We hear pardon, that's all we thinking about. We're not even thinking about the fact that it may be different. So commute and pardon is different. In law, commuted refers to the reduction of a criminal sentence by a higher authority, typically a governor or a president, without altering the conviction itself. So NBA Youngboy was pardoned. Larry Hoover was commuted. His federal life sentence was commuted. So the difference is NBA Youngboy crime was completely removed and he is set free, versus Larry Hoover, who had his convictions pardoned, the sentencing of his convictions pardoned on the federal level and commuted to something lesser. Well, actually, Donald Trump got rid of it completely. He commuted it to time served. So it's important for us to know the details. As my good brother, Dr. Wesley, says, that God is in the details. So it's good to have the details. And President Trump commuted the federal life sentence to time served. So that means he's done with that on the federal level. However, Larry Hoover is still facing a state case. So he's not coming home. He's not free. But you see a lot of people online saying, welcome home, Larry Hoover. I'm glad he's home. He's not home. So it's important for us to understand the difference, right? So, all right, so now that we got that out the way, we got a lot of backlash, different mixed reactions as to the news coming out about his commuted sentence and things of that nature. So I'm not going to really touch on NBA Youngboy so much. I really want to deal with Larry Hoover. in a way that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan would have us to deal with this particular subject and topic, because I feel like it's necessary and it needs to be added to the conversation. So you have a lot of people who are upset about the commuting or the commutation of the sentence for Larry Hoover because of various reasons, right? You know, they say he may or may not have been a political prisoner. You understand what I'm saying? People are saying, obviously, that, you know, Donald Trump, because Donald Trump did this, you know, you got people who are just not fans of Trump. So because no matter what the situation is, if Trump name is attached to it, then it's automatically a bad thing. So you got people reacting to the fact that President Trump may be pardoning NBA Youngboy, who's very popular in our community, and commuting the sentence for Larry Hoover because he's very popular in our community, just to gain trust in the black community for, you know, for whatever reason. I don't know what he may be doing it for, but for whatever reason he's doing it, our people are not liking that, obviously, because it's coming from Donald Trump and the Republicans, right? So you got all of these mixed emotions, mixed bag of feelings around this whole situation. So I wanted to bring into the conversation the perspective of what Brother Larry Hoover did, the spirit of redemption and transformation and forgiveness, and how sometimes our limited view and quick to judge people has us being agents for the enemy without us even knowing. That's how we want to approach this particular situation, because again, I'm reading the comments. I posted it on my Instagram, and I got a lot of mixed comments on my Instagram, you know, about this particular thing. A lot of it because it's coming from Donald Trump, and a lot of it because people don't agree with the music that NBA Youngboy has put out and the things that Larry Hoover has been convicted of. Why would you let somebody like that out of prison or even commute their federal sentences, right? So I think it's important that we look at the words from Larry Hoover Jr., his son. Larry Hoover Sr.'s son talked about the case, and he talked about it on Breakfast Club, and we'll hear a little bit right here, just so that we can get kind of a understanding of, you know, what actually is going on. Because it's important for us to gather as many facts and as many details as possible as we look at this thing. And I think Larry Hoover Jr. is a good person to help give us some clarity and some understanding on it. And shout out to Lauren LaRosa, because, you know, she takes the time to get to do due diligence in her investigative journalism and reporting on things like this. So this is good. She's a very good example of how you should address topics and current news and news in our culture from our perspective, because she always gonna have a source. She's never giving you something and doesn't have a source attached to the information. So she's not the Shade Room or these other blogs, you know, that just throw out stuff. And I'm not gonna say that they throw out stuff without a source, but what I am gonna say is that they don't thoroughly investigate. You know, their biggest thing is about headlines, and the more headlines they can draw, obviously the bigger the engagement they can get on their posts. But I like Lauren LaRosa's style. I like how she goes about her business. So anyway, she went out to make sure that she reached out to Larry Hoover Jr. to help get complete context on his case. So let me get this pulled up, and then we'll hear from Larry Hoover Jr. on what's going on, you know, essentially with Pops, right? So let me do this, bam. Let's do this. All right.
And I was trying to let people know that he was being held under dual jurisdiction, which is he's been held under state law and he has been held under federal law all at the same time. So he still had two cases to fight. So he had to fight the federal case and he still had to fight the state case. So now he's dealing with the state case. I don't really know the law on it. I heard that it was illegal to help hold a person under dual jurisdiction, which they don't usually do, but they never uplifted the state case when they took him into federal custody. So now we're dealing with state law now.
Okay, so first thing is that Larry Hoover Jr. lets us know that through the commuting of the sentence, right? He's done federally, but he has to still fight the state case, and that it's possible that you're not even allowed to have people under two jurisdictions. So if you got a state case and you under state jurisdiction, then the feds can't put you under their jurisdiction. Normally, if you have started in the state and then you turned over to the feds, the state does not continue to have jurisdiction over your case. That's usually how it goes. So the feds will take it, then you'll be under federal custody, whatever the case may be. And then if the feds decide they want to kick it back down to the state, then the feds don't have custody of you no more, and you become under state custody, and the case goes back into the jurisdiction of the case. So that's not what's going on with this particular case. They have him under both, which, we're not 100% sure if that's even something that's legal. So Larry Hoover Jr. helped us to understand that. So now he's going to go a little bit more into what's going on.
So I know that you guys have like this movement that you're trying to do where when it comes to the state things, you guys are asking for like local leadership that would actually be able to do anything. Is it like lessen the sentence, or what are you asking for on a state level?
Okay, so my father is actually a C number. And C numbers were because, people have a misunderstanding of everything that's going on. People are talking about the narrative of who they say my father is and what he has done. We're going back to his state case. And he was sentenced as a C number. A C number were men that were sentenced in the 70s, and they gave him indeterminate sentences. So his sentence was to be at least 200 years, and he has to go to the parole board every, it was supposed to be every year. And when we went to court last, they wanted to make it 5 years, but the lawyers fought and they made it 3 years. So the C numbers go to the parole board. They don't have a determined amount of time. They go to the parole board, and it's up to them to decide whether they deserve to be paroled. And when my father went to be paroled last time, they said that he didn't do what they needed him to do, even though he was in the ADX, and it was no way possible for him to do the things that they needed him to do. They were saying like, oh, you didn't take classes, you didn't do this to try to show that you was thankful and that you regret what you did. But at the same time, he's locked in a closet underground in Colorado.
And then when I posted it online, I knew that the natural pushback would be, but this man is responsible for, like I mentioned, there is alleged drug trafficking, extortion, and murder. Mm-hmm. So I asked his son, like, this is how people feel. They feel like we're glorifying someone who caused all of these things in the community. What do you say to that? And here's what he said.
People that say that, they don't understand who he is. They're listening to the narrative of people that don't know what they're talking about. Can they tell you people that he has caused to be killed, or that he has said kill or killed himself? He's been in prison all of this time. Right now, we're fighting a state case that happened when he was 22 years old, when he was a baby. And they said that he gave the call for somebody to be murdered. And his rappy on the case said that he did the murder and he was released. That's what we're fighting with right now, right? The stuff that those people are talking about are hearsay, rumors. I'm not saying that.
All right, so that's Larry Hoover Jr. that kind of goes into the case a little bit and talks about what was actually taking place. All right, so now we got a little bit more context as to what actually happened. Okay, so just to give some more context to that, Larry Hoover was convicted in 1973 of ordering a murder of William Pookie Young and sentenced to 150 to 200 years. Back then in the 70s, as Larry Hoover Jr. just explained, under the laws at that time, he was a C number, which if you was convicted of a particular crime, I believe that they gave an indefinite amount of time. So it was anywhere from 150 to 200 years in state prison. Okay, but then in 1997, Hoover was convicted of running a continuing criminal enterprise, conspiracy, extortion, money laundering, and drug trafficking, resulting in multiple life sentences. So this was federal charges. So in 73, he was convicted in the state. In 97, he was convicted on federal charges and received multiple life sentences. Now, plot twist, because the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan spoke on Larry Hoover and mentioned that Brother Larry Hoover had began to change what GD stood for and what it meant. In its inception, it was Gangster Disciples, but our brother Larry Hoover began to change that narrative while he was in prison and change that to growth and development. It went from Gangster Disciples to growth and development, and he began to encourage young black men to go to college. He encouraged young black men to get educated. He encouraged young black men to do positive things and not be in the streets. And because Larry Hoover has such a positive impact and more so has such a huge influence on young black men who were formerly in the streets or were currently in the streets, but he had the ability to navigate them in a positive direction, he became a threat more than he was a threat when he was in the drug gang or in the streets. He became a threat because now he could positively organize young black men to do the positive thing and to get out of the streets. So they trumped up these charges in 97 to give him the federal convictions, and they gave him, I believe it was 6 life sentences in federal courts for quote unquote continuing running a criminal enterprise, right? This is documented information that Big U out in California, out on the West Coast, documented information that when he began to change the course of direction that he was giving young black men in Crips and was introducing them to Islam as taught and represented by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. When he started to take young black men and move them into another direction, they gave him additional time because of his association with the Nation of Islam and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Again, these were men that were trying to change their life and move into another direction. And because they had the ability to influence young men positively, they were penalized by the United States government and the judicial system and given increased time and things of that nature. So this is what you have going on. And this is, like I said, this ain't my opinion. This is actual facts. You can go and look up Big U's case. You can go look up Big U's case. He talked about it in one of the interviews. It's in his paperwork that because he was associating with Minister Farrakhan, they gave him additional time. So the minister spoke on Larry Hoover and said that they had fear of Larry Hoover because his ability to organize young black men. Because of his ability to organize young black men, he became more of a threat to the government and their plan, their pipeline of taking young black men out of school and bringing them right into the prison pipeline. He became a threat to that. So they wanted to make sure they was never going to let him out of jail or prison. So they do that by finding loopholes in the law that will allow them to do things like have your case under 2 jurisdictions. So if you get out of one, then you're still in the hands of another. See, family, you dealing with some wicked individuals that operate in high places. All right? But look, we're gonna keep rolling because I wanted to really touch on the idea, the thought, or the mindset that we have behind our people that make mistakes, right? I think, you know, when we look at our people and they make mistakes, because one of the things that Larry Hoover Jr. pointed to was his father was convicted of this in 1973 when he was 22 years old. I don't believe nobody has ever said that Larry Hoover Sr. was an angel, that he wasn't in the streets, that he wasn't gangster, he wasn't doing all of these different things. But the person that actually committed the crime is free. He admitted he committed the crime. I believe he did time. We don't know. I don't know if he did time or not. But however, Larry Hoover Jr. said that he's free. The person that actually did the shooting. Now remember, Larry Hoover was convicted for ordering the shooting, but the trigger man is actually free. And Larry Hoover Jr. said everybody involved with that case is free now, except Larry Hoover. So we have to ask ourselves, why is he still in prison after all of the perpetrators involved, except himself, are free? We got to ask ourselves that. We have to ask ourselves that now. So, again, he was 22 years old when he was convicted of this in 1973. And a lot of us do things at 22 years old that we're not going to do at 32 years old. We're not going to do at 42, 52, 62, I believe. Larry Hoover is 74 years old now. So he was convicted of something that he did at 22 that he's still paying for in his 70s. And the minds of the people, the hearts of the people are being used and abused. The minister has already talked about us being a misused people and how the media plays on our heartstrings. And this is just another example of that. So I want to first talk about the judgmental part, because this not only happens in the Larry Hoover case, but in every case, especially dealing with black people, every case, whether it's Dr. Cosby, the Diddy case right now, Puff, R. Kelly case, our brother Kwame Kilpatrick, the former mayor of Detroit, former mayor Marion Barry, Larry Hoover, any of our people that find themselves in a court of law under whatever alleged charges and things of that nature, you can see the same reaction from the black community. You see the same reaction coming from us as a people. The same reaction. And if we notice that, then the enemy noticed that. They say, every time we put one of their people up, they react the exact same way. The Tory Lanez case. Reaction, same way. So I want to talk about from how the minister broke down the judgmental aspect of the human nature. And the minister said that there is a natural tendency in the human being to look at circumstances, an event, or a person and hastily make some form of judgment. Now, the minister's giving us this through his interviews on Closing the Gap. I'm reading from page 93. If you got the book, you can get the words right off the page. So the minister said, oftentimes, when that person comes closer to the subject, digs deeper into the event or the circumstance, they recognize that their first judgment was improper or incorrect. This tendency that exists causes the human being great trouble because, unfortunately, when we make a hasty judgment of an event, a circumstance, or a person, our ego can get involved in that judgment, and therefore, that judgment could be a blinding factor in our properly relating to the event, the circumstance, or the person. And you see that often all over social media. It doesn't matter what the situation is. As soon as a headline comes out about somebody that's in our community, then the first thing that we do is we give judgment. First thing, the headline is fresh, but we all got an opinion and we all have judgment on that particular person based on the little bit of information that's given in the headline. We don't know this person from a can of paint. We haven't dug deeper into the person, into the event, the circumstances behind the event. We don't know any of that, but we given judgment. But the minister says that's something that's natural in the human being, and why the Holy Quran exhorts us and counsels us to be patient. But let me read what the minister said, right? So there is in human nature, as the Holy Quran teaches us, that the man is made in haste. This is why the Quran counsels us to gain the quality of patience. If we were by nature patient, we would not make hasty judgments. But because by nature we are hasty, then we make hasty judgments hasty decisions based on hasty judgments. The minister says that I find in my experience with our people and with human beings generally that tendency is real in everybody. It takes great discipline to withhold the tendency or to control the tendency to make snap judgments without having not some of the facts, but as many of the facts that are possible to be known. This is why I believe that the Bible teaches, judge not lest you be in danger of judgment. Because no matter what we think we know, only God knows all the factors in an event, in a circumstance, and that which is in us and surrounds a person. So the minister's talking to us about the nature of us as human beings to be hasty in our judgment of a person or a circumstance or a situation without gathering all of the information. And you see all of that playing out each and every time out when they have these different cases against our people. You see this playing out all the time. And what happens is that does great harm. Well, now how do we connect this to Larry Hoover, right? This is connected to Larry Hoover on this aspect because we are hasty to judge what Larry Hoover did many years ago in the 70s. Over 40 years ago. We still are judging him on something from 40 plus years ago that he did as a child without making room or having room in our ego to be corrected. So the minister says that only God, the best knower, is qualified to really make a judgment. His judgment then becomes a trial for the judgmental because he sees so much when he judges that it takes the hasty judgmental person time to catch up to the wisdom involved in a judgment or a determination made by God, and they may do much harm to themselves and others until they catch up to his judgment. I mean, even when people are upset with this, because Donald Trump did this. And we don't even know the reason why God allowed Donald Trump to make this move. See, we hasty in our judgment, as the minister just laid out, that because Donald Trump pardoned NBA Youngboy, as well as the commuting of the sentence for Larry Hoover, we are so emotional and riled up that we talking about, brother, why should you be posting this on your social media page? Because we don't know. We know that Donald Trump has got an agenda, and Donald Trump is trying to get trust with the black community and trying to do, He may be trying to do all of that, but Donald Trump is not the author of his thoughts. He's not even the originator of his thoughts and his actions. We keep forgetting that God is in control of this whole thing, and we forget or don't even know the time that we living in. Donald Trump is an instrument for change. He's an instrument for change in America. And anybody who wants to see something different, who tired of seeing the same thing that we've been seeing for the last 400, almost 500 years in the condition of black people in America and the United States as a whole. Because not only do black people suffer under this white supremacist ideology and this wickedness, but all people suffer under it. We just catching hell the worst because we always catch hell the worst. But everybody is suffering under this. So Donald Trump is the fulfillment of the agent of change that is he's just part of the plan of God to change this world of wickedness and wipe it out. So he's facilitating things through President Trump. But we so emotional, we can't even see how God is facilitating change through President Trump. And that's what the minister said, man. Trump can't do anything that God don't allow him to do. And we ain't affected. We're not worried about what President Trump got going on. He's not any worse than any of the white leaders that you've been had. He's not worse than President Biden or President Bush or President Clinton. He may just be bolder, which black people need. We need to stop having thieves and robbers dress up in suits and talk nice while they do their wickedness in the dark. No, we don't need none of that. The wickedness that Henry Kissinger and all of those Bill Gates that they do meticulously and maliciously in the darkness that black people don't see affecting them on a daily basis. No. You need a President Trump to come out straight up. He need that David Duke energy. Come out straight up and tell you this what we doing. This how we feel about you. This how we moving. And then you know how to properly deal. And then you can prepare accordingly. That's like a basketball team or a football team going into a game and not having a scouting report on the team that they're about to play. How effective are they going to be if they don't know anything about the opponent? And this is why black people have been ineffective, part of the reason, against the opponent, because we haven't studied the game plan. We haven't studied the tape. Now, before, you had to really do your research to go in and study the tape. You got to study history. You got to look at patterns. You got to look at resume. You got to look at what they've done to past indigenous people to pick up on their agenda and what their aim is. You got to look at the scripture and find out what their aim is, what their end goal is. But now with somebody like President Trump, you don't even have to do all of that because he telegraphed it. He gonna tell you before you got to do all of that. He gonna tell you what's happening straight up. And now it's on you to be able to prepare against that. Okay? So we don't understand how God is moving these pieces like a President Trump. We don't understand that, but we hasty in our judgment. We hasty in our judgment against our people. We hasty in anything that we see that we don't necessarily agree with. We hasty in the judgmental in the judgmental thoughts that we have, which are natural because we all have them. But the minister says that you have to be. What did the minister say? He says it takes a great discipline. It takes great discipline to withhold the tendency. So all of us have it, but we have to have discipline to withhold that tendency to judge until we have all of the information that's available about the circumstances, subject, or the person, and or the person. So that's what we try to do. Following the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, we try to sit back and we try to analyze all of the available information so that we don't find ourselves in haste. So, moving on, that's what we got going on with this. So I want to read a little bit further. And the minister talked about judgments, right? Because the minister said that in a limited circumstance, we can make true judgments. But oftentimes our egos are so wrapped up in the judgments that we make, we never leave room in our judgment for the possibility of mistake or error. That is the tragedy of judgment. And that's what you see happening in Tory Lanez case, right? Everybody rushed to judgment, hasty on Tory Lanez against Megan Thee Stallion, Megan Pete. And we never left room for the possibility of mistake or error. So now years later, new evidence is emerging and it's a possibility that people who rushed to judgment years ago and applauded the conviction of Tory Lanez may now have to go back and correct what they said. But that's the thing about social media. See, once you say something, it's on record now. That's why you got to be slow. That's why you got to be careful, because what you say on social media is permanent. As you can see, they go back and pull up tweets from 2014. They pull up tweets from 10 years ago, 15 years ago, as far back as Twitter go. They can pull up some tweets on you. They can pull up videos on you. They can pull up, things that you said at that particular time. They used that against Snoop. When Snoop went and did the Bitcoin performance up at the White House during the inauguration and all that, they pulled Snoop clip from a couple of years ago when President Trump first got into the White House in 2016 and how he was all against Trump and everything like that. They used that against him. Right? So you got to be careful. You got to think about what you're saying out here. Because once it hit the internet, once you upload it on these platforms, it is there. So we don't leave room in our judgment for a possibility of mistake or error. That is the tragedy of judgment. The minister said, "This is why in my mind to be made a judge of the human condition is one of the greatest honors that can be bestowed on a person. But when you are made a judge, you are in the greatest position to come under the judgment of God." That's deep. That's deep. So the minister says this. So when God says, "Judge not lest you be in danger of judgment," we ought to speak less and think more and desire to know as much as we can about the circumstance, the event, or the person before we open our mouths to make a judgment. That is, unfortunately, is not always done. And unfortunately, this will always be the human condition until we become so humble and righteous in character that we desire to do no man or woman wrong. And that is one of the things that stood out to me, because our desire has to be that we don't want to do no man or woman wrong. So we got to make sure that before we open our mouths and make a judgment against a person, that we are as close to right and exact as possible. But I think in our community, we have been so fueled with self-hate that we could care less about doing somebody right or wrong. That's not our end goal. That's not our end goal. I believe we project a lot on other individuals. And because self-hate has taken over our minds, we don't want to see no black person successful. We don't want to, it's hard for us to believe. You can go online now and take a poll, and I guarantee you that most of us don't believe that there's a successful black person that has not done any wickedness or evil. And when I say by that, what I mean by that is that obviously none of us are perfect. Nobody is perfect. So of course we all sinned. The scripture said we are born in sin and shaped in iniquity. So we don't have no choice but to have committed sin. But the problem is we have those who have sinned, obviously, but have changed their life and now live according to what God has given us to live by, which is a righteous life. Everybody out here is not sinning. And it's a continual process of growth and elevation. So even if you're striving to live a righteous life, it's constantly, every day, you working to improve yourself. You working to become better and to grow into the mind and the heart of God so that you can become a sinless individual in the eyes of God. That's the work, though, that has to be done. It's not an overnight process. You can't commit one mistake, seek forgiveness, ask for forgiveness, and then move on and think that there's no more work to be done. But our people, all it takes is for you to do one thing, and it's over with for the rest of your life. They always going to hold that one thing against you no matter what. No matter what. And then the power of the media is so strong that if you got a track record of doing right, all it takes is one headline. And once we grab that headline, oh boy, the first thing we're going to, man, I knew that nigga was doing this, then that. You know, you can't trust these niggas. You know how we do. I knew that nigga was da-da-da-da-da. And you ain't got no proof, nothing. But you knew that nigga was doing something. But that's how we are. Because in our minds, black people are not successful without doing crimes and, you know what I'm saying, doing having scandals and all that stuff. It's subconsciously programmed in our minds that black people are always engrossed in some type of scandal. Always. And then the media double down on that. They double down, they play down on that all the time. That's why anytime there's a scandal, it's always reported. You don't never hear about the good things that people do. You might hear about a story here and there, whatever the case may be. But you got a lot of artists, entertainers, athletes, pastors, right? Political commentators, podcast hosts, a lot of people who are public figures who do a lot of good stuff. Every weekend, every month, they doing good stuff. They got a boys mentor program, a women's mentor program. They going out helping disabled veterans. They helping the elderly. They doing all these different things. But you don't hear about that stuff on a regular basis. You always find that the media is going to pull a scandal out of somebody's life and put that on Front Street. Then they're going to drag the person through the media. They're going to destroy their character. They don't ever, and then no matter what happens, nobody apologizes if they was wrong, as the minister said. There's no room left in our ego for the possibility, or in our judgment for the possibility of mistake or error. Nobody apologizes for what they did. They just do people any type of way and just move on. And we accept it. We participate in it, then we accept it. Because none of the black community come out and apologize for the most part. Some of us do. But the majority of the masses don't come out and acknowledge the fact that, dang, we was wrong, man. We owe bro apology. We owe sis an apology. You understand? But that's because we've been programmed to think that we ain't nothing. So we always got some game going on, always got some scandal happening, and that's just it. It's just part of life. You're gonna be scandalous. And that's just not the case. So what does the minister say, right? That we gotta grow in righteousness and humility, that we don't want to see nobody done wrong. So the minister says, so then we must speak less and we must counsel more and do it with patience. This is what I find in the Quran, that God is consistently counseling us to learn to be patient. So listen to this. The minister says that I think that, Brother Jabril asked this question. I got to say this so that it makes sense, right? He asked the minister, he said, Brother Minister, since we will one day have a full-blown judicial system, which will include judges, what are some of the qualities that immediately come to your mind that should characterize these kind of persons? The minister said, I think the greatest quality must first be the love of God, a love of truth, and an insatiable desire to know more and more and more about the subject. One must have the characteristic of humility. No judge should be arrogant, because arrogance over your position makes you ineffective as a judge. It makes you ineffective. Arrogance makes you ineffective as a judge. Humility always keeps your heart open for greater knowledge, because you recognize the value, the importance of making a right judgment, and you recognize the consequences of making an improper judgment. So you recognize the consequences of making an improper judgment. So listen to this. The minister says that it is the consequences of faulty judges and faulty decisions that bring down nations, societies, and individuals. And that's what we see going on. People being brought down because of faulty judgments that have been made. So that's the judgment part of it. You know, that's the judgment aspect of it that we have to grow out of. And the minister says it takes focus. It takes discipline for us to not react to that natural haste that we have. So, yeah, NBA Youngboy made some bad choices. Ant-Man make bad choices. All our hip-hop artists make, Young Thug. You name them, they done made bad choices. But the problem is they're not the only ones that make bad choices. We all make bad choices. They bad choices just publicized. But we all make bad choices. But that's not the totality of who the person is. And that's not the end of their life. And hopefully, if they are intentional about changing as you grow and mature, then you transform out of the person who made those bad decisions and you make better decisions as you grow older and get wiser. So listen, because now I want to get into the reason why me personally take these specific type of positions, and why you'll hear the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan take the positions with people who we believe shouldn't be allowed to, have any grace. So look at this. The minister said that, let me see this. Okay, the minister said the person who is given the task of redemption is a person who is willing to pay the price of redemption. First thing that I'm going to say is that everybody don't have the job of the Nation of Islam and the followers of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, or the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad or the minister. Everybody don't have their assignment, our assignment. And the assignment of the Nation of Islam is not to tear down or destroy or to throw away black people. That's not our job. That's not our assignment. Our assignment is to give life to the dead. It's to raise the dead. It's to deliver the 40 or 50 million or more to the Lamb of God. That is the sole purpose of the FOI. The brothers in the suit and the bow ties that you see on the corner, the sole purpose that we exist is to deliver our people to the Lamb of God. We in the work of resurrecting our people, no matter what sins they've committed. That's our job. That's our purpose. So when we take positions and look at it in this perspective, it's from a certain lens that we are looking at it from, and it's not a lens of condemnation or judgment. That doesn't mean that those who have committed crimes or did certain things don't deserve punishment, because you do. You have to be accountable. That's where accountability comes in. You have to be accountable for your actions. So you have to be accountable. We want to make sure that you're accountable, but we also are in the resurrecting business. So as you are accountable for your actions and for your deeds, if you are sincere in trying to change, then we are here to help support and to help foster or trigger or activate that change. And the reason why is because when you think about God, now think about this. In the Nation of Islam, we believe that God has come. We're not waiting on God to come. We believe that God came and that he raised the most honorable Elijah Muhammad to resurrect black people. And then through the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, there is an extension of the work of Elijah Muhammad, the resurrection of our people. So that's why we have a lens that we look through when we dealing with all of these different situations and circumstances and persons. And the reason why the celebrity cases or the highly publicized ones are the ones that you think we working on all the time, which is not the case, but are the ones you see, is because those are the ones you looking at. So how we going to affect change in you talking about something that you ain't even talking about? Yes, man. Okay, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Go see Harlem real quick. I may help you in a second. Close the door. Okay. So that's why we are doing what we do, because that's our work. That's our work. So, oh man, I hate when my hat get crooked on me. Okay. Now, look at this. The minister says, what is the price of redemption? The price is that your love must approach the love of Allah God, that you may be long-suffering. Because without long-suffering, you interrupt the process by which people are redeemed. Okay? Minister said, consider the quality of slow to anger. Well, you could return like for like, but if you are a redeemer, or if you are following a redeemer, returning like for like would not be sin, but it would enter the process by which the sinner would eventually come to redemption. And I'm reading from Closing the Gap, page 46 now. Since the sinner is by nature of God, but the nature of God in the sinner is thoroughly impacted with evil, we have to get past the layers of evil to contact the nature of God in the human being to effect redemption. Master Fard Muhammad, in his coming, made a demonstration for his servant for 3 years and 4 months of long suffering, of taking abuse to show him the price of redemption. Then on leaving, he tells his servant, take plenty. He wanted him to be long suffering so that all may come to life. See, he did not want one to perish. We may think that one is so ugly, so terrible. We will want that one to die because in our judgment, he has earned death. Yet he said he would pull one out of the fire that has done no good at all. My Lord. In the 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians are these words, though I speak with the tongue of angels, though I have the gift of prophecy, though I give my body to be burned, if I have not charity or love, I am nothing. In this dispensation, it is love that makes you something in the eyes of Allah God, because it is only love of Allah and love of the truth and love of the purpose for his coming and love of the people for whom he came that would cause you to have value in his sight. Love is not proud. Love is long suffering. Love endures all. It hopeth all. This has to be the spirit, the attitude of a person that has been called by Allah God to act as a redeemer. The price he must pay is to be all but completely selfish. So what does that have to do with Larry Hoover? Because we as a people, have to, number one, take on the spirit and the attitude of Allah in his purpose for coming for all of us. Because, see, God came to save all of us. He didn't come to save the ones who were sinless, the perfect people. If the perfect people stand to the back, the ones that never committed no sin, you ain't never lied, you ain't never did nothing scandalous, all y'all, he ain't come to just save y'all. He came to save everybody. He didn't want one to perish. So if God doesn't want one to perish, then that should be our mindset. But more importantly, for those who have been called to be redeemers, that's the spirit that we have to have and the attitude that we have to have, is to be all but completely selfless. So it's out of the love that we have, not the glorification of evil deeds. Nobody's saying that Larry Hoover did not commit any crimes and don't have punishment to pay. But at what point is enough enough? He's been in jail since 1973. He was locked up at 22 years old and is now in his 70s. When is enough enough? In America, they say this is the land of second chances and redemption. How you can fall from grace and then have the ability and the opportunity to redeem yourself. So when is Brother Larry Hoover going to have the opportunity to redeem himself? What is it that he has to do in order to show you that he is a changed person? He's not the same person that went in 1973. That's a fact. And we as a community cannot be engaged in helping the enemy push a narrative as if a brother has not entered into transformation, growth, and development to change and to take accountability for his actions and to become better than he was when he first came in. One of the things that his son mentioned was the fact that he was an illiterate, dyslexic 22-year-old when he first came in 1973. but he went to school. He went to college. He educated himself. He taught himself how to be a man. He taught others. He encourages positivity and influences those who would listen to not make the same mistakes that he made. Who else would be a better mentor to young black people than a black man who was once young, who made poor decisions? But this is not about redemption for the black man. It's never about redemption for the black man when it comes to white supremacy. And we got to understand that. So those of us who follow the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and when we realize the work of the minister is to redeem our people. That doesn't mean that he won't correct them. That doesn't mean that he doesn't chastise us for poor decisions or poor behavior that we display. Because you can pull all of that up to the minister, wear us out about how we are. But he also calls us and beckons us to change into truth from the love that he has to see us redeemed. Because he understands how we got into this condition. And he understands the nature in which we were made. Our nature is from God. And we were made into niggas. We was made into Negroes. We was made into, pimps and hoes and all of these. We was made into that. It's nowhere in no scripture that God ever said, let us make a pimp or let us make a hoe or let us make a scammer. God don't make that stuff. God made a man in his image and in his likeness. And when we go further into that, we know that God made us into little gods, images of himself. But then Satan came and took what God made and made something else. And that's what we're dealing with today. So we got to get through, as the minister said, we got to get through the evil, right? The layers of evil that we've been put under. Being born in sin, shaped in iniquity, right? Being reared under Satan himself. We got to dig through that to tap in to the nature of God that resides in the human being. And that's a special job assignment that those of the FOI and followers of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan take up when you decide you want to join on and you want to help the minister in the mission. So that's why you see these positions, the posture taken against this. That don't mean that the brothers ain't wrong, the brothers ain't guilty of what they did. Oftentimes, they are guilty of what they did. And they got to pay for that. But after time has been served, and after the redemption transformation has taken place, I mean, damn, Jesus, how long you going to have somebody 200 years in prison is a long time. It's a very long time. Brother been in prison for 50 years. Larry Hoover been in jail for 50 years, bro. You mean to tell me it's no good in him that he can't come out now? And then we're not even going to get into the reason why he was given the federal charges in the first place. Because the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said he was a threat because of his ability to organize young black men. And we know the government hates anybody that can organize young black men. So we gotta understand. Let's work to change our thought process when it comes to dealing with our people. Do we got some effed up ways? Absolutely. Is it too much to bear for most people? Absolutely. That's why everybody ain't in this. That's why everybody don't have the job or the assignment of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Because everybody ain't cut from the cloth that's necessary to handle black people. That's why you got to have a special teacher. We'll get into that another time, but there's a reason why the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad was the one that was raised to deal with black people. See, you got to have gone through a certain circumstance. You had to be grown up and dealt with the things specifically that black people in America deal with to teach them. You can't be from no other country teaching black people. I don't give a damn how religious, spiritual, divine you think you are. If you don't have the black experience, you can't teach. You can't do nothing with black folks. We a different animal altogether. But that's a conversation for another day. But I wanted to get in that and give that on our brother Larry Hoover, and how we hastily judge and how we hastily judging what's going on with America right now, because we don't really know. And we have completely removed God from this whole thing. So most of the time, people, when they talk about what's going on in America, they only dealing with the political aspect, political, economic, societal, social, but nobody's dealing with the spiritual. Nobody. And then those who deal with the spiritual don't really have the knowledge to deal with the spiritual properly. You understand? So, huh? No, I don't. But I'll get with you in a second. Okay? So, they don't really have the ability to deal with the spiritual the way that it needs to be done. Our people don't need to be preached to. They need to be taught. You understand? So, man, comment your thoughts below. Let me know what you think about Brother Larry Hoover and the commuting of his sentence. And after you heard this, what's your thoughts on Larry Hoover and the commuting of his sentence and what needs to be done? Because I don't believe that we should be championing any white system to keep black people locked up behind bars. I don't believe in that. So, comment your thoughts below. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and that you share as well, family. And, man, we appreciate you for watching and listening. And, man, we catch you next time on Shifting the Culture Podcast. Peace.
Any leadership that teaches you to depend upon another race is a leadership that will enslave you. Any leadership that teaches you to depend upon another race is a leadership that will enslave you. They gave leadership to our foreparents, and that leadership made them slaves. But we have decided to find a leadership of our own.
Not your average nigga, I'm a god out the hood. They can't downplay me. I came up, I'm elevated. I ain't gotta say too much for them to know I'm coming for what's mine. They see me in my presence, say they see how I'm coming. Young, but you not just gonna finesse me like you did my peoples. Then back when you said they was emancipated. This ain't that. Your head too big, you feeling yourself. The game wasn't fair, you had the advantage, we wasn't educated. I don't look at you people the same. Nah. Your worst nightmare, my skin tone about them chains. Yeah. Not no circus lion, son, I can't be tamed. You gon' have to kill me, pussy, Toby ain't my name. Y'all still wanna think our history started when we were slaves? What? Come on now, talk about them pyramids we made. I was chosen by that man, y'all just been running game. The nerve of you acting